question. Suppose, Lord Russell, this film were to be looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time. What would you think it's worth telling that generation about the life you've lived and the lessons you've learned from it?
I should like to say two things. One intellectual and one moral. The intellectual thing I should want to say to them is this. When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out. Never let yourself be diverted either by what you wish to believe or by what you think could have beneficent social effects if it were believed. But look only and solely at what are the facts. That is the intellectual thing that I should wish to say. The moral thing I should wish to say to them is very simple. I should say, love is wise, hatred is foolish. In this world, which is getting more and more closely interconnected, we have to learn to tolerate each other. We have to learn to put up with the fact that some people say things that we don't like. We can only live together in that way. And if we are to live together and not die together, we must learn a kind of charity and a kind of tolerance, which is absolutely vital to the continuation of human life on this planet.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name is Luis Jimenez. Thank you all so much for being here. Truly appreciate it. A lot of people ready to start this show. Can't say hi to everybody, but thank you to all the regulars and all the newcomers. Leia, I see you. Mark, Elsby, Skyhawk88, Tony Kent, Simon Fly, all you guys, thank you all so much for being here. Let's get started with today's show because we've got a really good one ready for you guys. So there was another episode of the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. It was like a bonus episode, which was really cool. I don't know if it counted as an actual episode. Maybe we'll ask Brandon about that when we bring him on here in a second. Before we do, of course, I want to remind you guys you can support the show through Patreon. It's a great way to support the show. If you can't do it financially, don't sweat it. No paywall here. Everything's free. But if you can, it's much appreciated. Other than that, let's just get started with the show. Let's bring in our crew, our Skinwalker crew, rather. Jazz, Christina, Jane is going to be here. She's going to try and make it here before the hour ends. We'll see if she makes it. We had to start the show a little early because of the time constraints of Mr. Brandon Fugal. So, guys, how was your weekend? How did you like this extra episode? Was it fun? Good one?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah?
It wasn't available on Amazon Prime, but I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Rather wasn't able to watch it, but Jazz, I know you enjoyed it as well, right? You watched it 3 times.
I watched it live yesterday and watched it twice again today to get ready for the show. Yeah, I enjoyed it. A lot of questions came up, so hopefully we can address some of those tonight.
Well, let's do it. Let's bring on the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Brandon Fugal. Gentleman that is afraid of no question, welcomes all the tough questions, loves bringing it on, he says. We've got some tough ones for you today. But I just wanted to start the conversation with, first of all, thank you for your time. We truly appreciate you being here. I know you are an insanely busy man, and anytime I reach out to you, you're always so open and welcoming to share your time with us. And I know time is insanely valuable. And also wanted to just preface the conversation with, none of the questions here are going to be personal. I hope we leave the conversation as friends, but we did have tough questions, and we know that you always say, bring it on, welcome them. I want the answers just as badly as you guys do.
More. I want the answers more.
I want the
answers more than you do. I've put my money where my mouth is. I actually have put millions of dollars into getting the answers. So I'm not just an enthusiast. I truly have have devoted the resources to hopefully get to the bottom of what really is happening on this really interesting piece of property. So I can honestly, no offense, tell all of you, I am more focused and more dedicated and frustrated at times than anyone when it comes to trying to get to the bottom of what is happening out there and getting some answers.
Yeah. Well, and again, like, thank you.
No.
Thank you for coming up to the firing squad, taking the bullets and saying, all right, you got any more or are you out? You know, like because what happens in this conversation is we'll challenge some people. We'll ask them some of these tough questions and they get mad at us because our audience is trying to understand. I mean, for me, look, I've had, just like you've had on the ranch, and I think that, you know, your experience changed your mind on that ranch. Experiences, I could pluralize that.
Sure.
And my experience, you know, as well has changed my entire way of how I think about life, about everything. So I don't need convincing, but I'm trying to find the conversation that can convince, you know, an everyday average Joe. Like, those are the people I really want interested in this and conversating about this, because then that means that science is really paying attention and really putting money where their mouth is, just like you are. So with that said, you know, in the spirit of the conversation, I just want to say thank you. And I appreciate you, like, just being a badass and taking these questions
you bet. You've
with
seen
a grain of salt.
I don't think, I mean, not to pat myself on the back, but I don't think there's anyone else in my position that is engaging more with the public and is willing to open themselves up to public scrutiny and actually engage and answer questions, even on a granular level, that are fired over social media and beyond. And so why would I subject myself to that? Well, because I'm a fellow truth seeker. I really am right there by everyone's side, eager to get the answers and eager to share what we find out, what we discover. You've heard me say this often, I think in previous interviews, but I don't just consider myself the owner of Skinwalker Ranch. I'm the steward, and that stewardship comes with a level of responsibility. And I think, you know, going with that is what goes with that is a public engagement priority that since I came out publicly as the owner in March of 2020, I've taken very seriously.
Well, I think you've been a good steward, and I think you've, like you said before, nobody else has done this. Like, nobody else opened the doors. Nobody else let you, see
most
what's
people,
on the ranch.
Their handlers. Yeah. I mean, you guys know this. I mean, if you want to reach out to some of the other figures, they have their intermediaries or their filters, and they want to discuss in advance what questions are going to be asked, and certain things are off the table, and you don't get any of that with me. I don't fear anything. That's what happens when you're not a bullshitter. When you actually operate from a position of truth and transparency, you have nothing to fear. That doesn't mean that I have all the answers, and I may not have at my fingertips some of the more technical details that are needed to better understand the nature of the experiments or the outcomes, but I can at least intelligently respond to any question and welcome the engagement, because I do believe that this is the greatest science project of our time. And as much as that sounds like hyperbole, I challenge anyone to demonstrate that there's anything else going on out there, especially on a private basis, that would equal what we're bringing to the table. And I don't say that arrogantly. I say that like a proud father. I say that as someone who is proud of his team and proud of the effort thus far to bring forward, I think, the most compelling evidence of the phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch. So it's exciting to engage. I love you guys. I love the spirited debate that you bring to the table. I love the critiques. Even though I may respectfully disagree with some of the assessments, it challenges me to do better. And it challenges me to go back to my team as we are setting the stage for another phase of experiments and research to to bring even more discipline to.
You see, this is what I love. This is what I love about Brandon Fugal, and I'm going to go ahead and move the disclosure clock a couple minutes forward because that's awesome. Like, it's awesome that you love our criticisms and that you're taking them into considering them into future things. And I can't wait to see, what that ends up turning into be. But let's get to it. I'll open the panel to go ahead and ask Brandon any questions you guys want about this season, about the last 3 seasons as a whole, or anything at all. But I feel like you're chomping at the bit. Rather, go for it.
Well, yeah. Maybe kind of a high level question. I've seen a lot of your Twitter conversations about people challenging you about, is this real science or is this not real science? Yeah. And I guess kind of from my perspective, when I talk about science, I'm kind of thinking of the scientific method where you have hypotheses and then you test those hypotheses, and those hypotheses are, falsifiable.
Sure.
And I guess what I see on the show doesn't necessarily seem to be that. Like, I think that there's a lot of value and you're doing great things, but it seems to be more kind of like science exploration, kind of exploring what's on the ranch, rather than having those actual hypotheses that you can test and potentially falsify. Like you're not doing, control experiments on other places. And I think that it would follow the scientific method more if you did those control experiments and tried to replicate some of the experiments that you do have results for. And I just kind of what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that I have an accurate kind of summation of that, or?
Yeah, good point. I would say that Dr. Taylor and Eric Bard would respectfully disagree with your assessment. I think they believe not all cases are following, a linear path as far as the scientific method. But I think as far as testing hypotheses, having a control, and going back and revisiting a lot of these events and repeating the experiments in order to see if we have something of substance that can stand up to scrutiny has been a hallmark of our investigation. You take, for example, the flights over the airspace of the ranch. I mean, not only have we utilized the helicopter, but you saw, this last season in season 3, we used an airplane with instrumentation on board and Eric Bard to sweep the airspace to see if any of the anomalies that had been previously accounted for, at least documented with the helicopter exercise, would be repeatable. And not only were a lot of those anomalies repeated, but we did see the GPS failures and the unusual signals that were recorded and documented that came out of that experiment. I mean, one of the most repeatable and compelling experiments and pieces of evidence relative to the phenomena at the ranch is concerning the GPS anomalies, and that we've tasked balloons, instrumented balloons, rockets, helicopter, and also airplanes with skilled technicians. I mean, these aren't just hobbyists. I go back to earlier episodes. I mean, to bring out the University of Alabama, Huntsville professors, Matt Turner, for example, and his team, to conduct some of those early initial experiments with the instrumented rocketry and the balloons, and the results that not only came of that, but the stimulation of what appeared to be UFO or UAP sighting in broad daylight, that still everyone that participated in those experiments can attest to. I think not only was that compelling, but that established a baseline that you saw repeated with season 3. And so as I think in some respects you're right, some of this is just science exploration, and we're going out to try to determine where there may be areas that hold merit to try to investigate. You do have some repeatability and some experimentation that is truly following the scientific method and backed up by data. You guys see it all the time. I'm constantly hit with a barrage of requests for data. Show us the data, and of course we have data. I mean, what we're showing on the television series, as much as we're not walking people through reams of terabytes of data drawing from all of the scientific platforms, I think people can either believe that we really do have a legitimate scientific investigation, and what they're seeing on the docuseries so far is credible, that these people that have been putting their names, their reputations on the line in service to engaging with the team are telling the truth and are credible and backing up the data with their own testimonies and their own experience. I mean, to some degree that becomes the case with any type of peer-reviewed effort, to a degree, as you're reviewing the work of others and the work that has been produced over sometimes years, countless years of experimentation and research. But anyways, I didn't mean to go off on a bunch of tangents. Rather, good question.
Well, I would like to follow up a little bit on that, on specifically, the GPS data, because that is some interesting stuff. When I watch the show, though, kind of in the back of my mind, what I'm thinking is it's hard for me to know if that's GPS sensors, just how they work. Sometimes they maybe have bad data and report inaccurate locations. So I think it would be very valuable, and maybe you've already done this and just haven't shown it on the show, but do that experiment 20 miles from the ranch and verify that everything's reporting. These GPS trackers are all actually giving data as they should. I think that would.
What we don't show, and sorry to interject, is we actually carefully track the airspace coming and going from the ranch and that area in order to determine both before and after the experiment whether you see some of these anomalies repeated. I mean, we do have a very robust baseline as it relates to the helicopter in a multitude of environments across the state of Utah and even beyond, where we've kept a data log tracking when certain things come up, if we observe any anomalies. We've also, with respect to the follow-up experiments with the airplane, for example, it's important to note the entire day that we tasked that airplane and we were conducting those sweeps, we also were tracking and recording the instrumentation and how it was operating both before and after. And I think that helps us to some degree differentiate between what is happening potentially on the airspace above the ranch versus off the ranch, and whether it's repeatable or if there's truly a warranted, I think, discussion on the GPS anomalies. But I would say you can see on the series, what have we had, like 28, 29 episodes so far? How many of those episodes of the docuseries have addressed the GPS anomalies on the property? And I think we've been able to go back and revisit and confirm that this isn't just a fluke, that it is, to a degree, on this property, repeatable. And there, in our opinion, and the opinion of the third-party experts that we've engaged, we have yet to come up with a conventional, satisfactory answer or explanation for why this is occurring on this property and not other areas, not only within the basin, but even the greater Intermountain region.
Jazz, I'll let you go next, and then Christina, you can follow up with a question.
I'll just start by saying, because I've taken so many notes I've lost track, but we do hear a lot of complaints about, well, what if this isn't real? What if it's fake? I see this on social media all the time. I'm older than everybody here. When I was growing up, there was a saying that people commonly referred to, which is, a fool and his money are soon parted. Believe it, that may sound trite, but there's a lot of truth to it. Brandon Fugal, from everything we know, is not making money on this. He's flushing money into this, and yeah, there's a show. I just based on your reputation and your work history, you're not doing this for a profit. So I would ask people, well, is he telling the truth? Well, what's the alternative? You're gaslighting everybody so you can give all your money away? It's always struck me like that sort of person would not have reached your level of financial success if you were that eager to just piss your money away, So, but to get back to some of the stuff you talked about, the big thing I wanted to hit initially was you spent a lot of time doing this. You inherited this ranch, not inherited, you bought this ranch from somebody else.
Sure.
And there's a lot of questions that have been outstanding. And Luis touched on this earlier. You have most definitely been the most transparent person about what you found, what's been going on. How much communication have you had with Bob Bigelow about what he found? And in particular, I'm curious that the latest episodes, the last episodes of this season, and this is just one of many examples. There was the drilling that was going on. There's something that we have witnesses, one of which I interviewed before they ever showed up on the show or anything, who said there was a cave there. There was a cave in
Chris
the Mesa.
Bartell.
Right. And I talked to Chris.
The former
and two other
security
people.
officer, Chris Bartell, actually directed the team.
If there was a cave and now the cave has collapsed, either it was a natural function, I guess something like that happens, right? Or did somebody collapse that cave to bury something? And I'm just curious, have you ever had any communications with Bob Bigelow? Did they detonate something and blow up the cave? Has anybody asked him that question?
Sure. We asked those questions along with many others years ago before we opened the gates up for any docuseries. I didn't want to repeat any of the mistakes of the past. There's no reason to go back and for us to conduct investigation that has already occurred and ended up yielding no results. And so we right off the bat tried to have an open line of communication, not only with Mr. Bigelow, but more importantly, his science advisors, the former members of NIDS, of BASS, to the degree that they would engage in the spirit of collaboration and establishing a baseline. All that being said, there was very little data provided. My acquisition of the ranch was, of course, on an as-is, where-is basis. And at first, I was a little bit frustrated because I felt it was necessary for me to at least have some of that intel, some of that information if we were going to carry the investigation forward and take it to another level. But I quickly came to the conclusion that as a healthy skeptic, as someone who had never seen a UFO or ghost or had ever gone public relative to any interest in these topics, establishing a clean slate as a baseline was probably the most responsible way of approaching this ranch. When I found it, there was really no fiber optic infrastructure. There was no Wi-Fi. Frankly, there wasn't even power in order to operate a gate or a guard shack. The only security was really a cattle guard gate with a rusted chain and padlock out there at the entrance. And there really was no sophisticated security. I mean, the remnants of the old security systems, it was late 1990s technology, and it was woefully, I think, lacking as far as what we wanted to bring to the ranch. But at first I thought it would be easily disproven if we just simply set up some basic security parameters, some surveillance technology, and studied the geology of the area and whatnot. I mean, we have soil samples. We've had a number of surveys done of the property. And at first, I honestly believed that there was going to be a natural prosaic explanation for what had been reported there for decades, and that it would be revealed as nothing more than an adult scientific snipe hunt of sorts. And we were very, very pleasantly surprised to see that there really was substance behind a lot of these claims. Not to go off on a bunch of rabbit hole tangents, but one of the greatest surprises of our investigation has really involved interviewing people with firsthand experience and accounts of being on that property prior to the Sherman family or Mr. Bigelow, going back decades. A lot of people have accused Sherman and Bigelow of concocting this narrative and somehow either profiting off of it or carrying forward, the equivalence of ghost stories and mythology. And what we found to be very interesting is the testimony of not only law enforcement, but also neighbors that have finally gone on record. They have the courage to go on record, and others who actually had physical experience on the ranch. That at least helps us understand that a lot of the activity predates some of the traditional narrative that we inherited. Eric Bard often says, we are not led by a narrative, we are led by the data. And I take that to heart. We try not to be led by the stories or the narrative, but also to be led by, but not by the narrative, but we want to be led where the data takes us and where we find, I think, the most insightful results that would point us in the direction of documenting not only the reality of the phenomena, but also leading us to hopefully discover the agenda and the origin of it. So anyway, sorry to go off on a few tangents, Jazz.
No, thank you.
Well,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So did Bigelow blow up the mesa?
According to their former scientists, they are unaware of any effort of that nature, but we're going to get to the bottom of it.
Okay.
Get ready. Hold on.
Everything
really up until this point is child's play.
Can I do a really brief follow-up?
Yeah.
Because I had that on my list. There's been a lot of speculation, Brandon, about what did the drill hit, right? Everybody's asking this question. Some people have said could be a meteorite, right? Well, could be, right? Something might have crashed there billions of years ago. Who knows? Could be a flying saucer, could be aliens, right? One question that came to my mind, and I know this touches on some stuff you might not want to talk about yet. What if there's something buried under there that's government owned? I'm just tossing it out there, and I understand we don't have anything yet, but if somebody collapsed a cave there, what if they weren't collapsing something to do with aliens? What if they were collapsing something to do with the federal government? Just asking your opinion on that.
Well, we are going to get to the bottom of it. When you have experts from the University of Utah confirming that this is unusual, that this appears to be not a naturally occurring combination out there, that they're recovering from the mesa, I have to believe that lends a lot of credibility to the claims that there really is something unusual buried there that warrants investigation.
Fair enough.
Before we get to Christina's question real quick, I just want to remind the audience, we're trying to keep your questions as many as we can, and we'll try to ask as many as we can at the end to Brandon before he gets out of here. So just want to let you guys know that we're not ignoring your questions. We're trying to, I'm trying to save every single one I can. Christina, what do you got?
I get knocked a bit for voicing my speculation and theory about what may be going on at the ranch. But, I believe a big part of trying to figure out this mystery is stepping outside of the box, because there's so many that will always try to find conventional explanations. So I kind of find myself looking into the more extraordinary realms and theories to gain insights. And so I'm very curious about the static light anomaly in episode 4, seen at a very high altitude, that looked like a wormhole opening and closing in the upper atmosphere that Eric Bard caught on camera. How often has this been captured on camera, and have you received any feedback from anyone on what it could be?
Good question. You're referring to the episode entitled "Scoped Out," where we brought out the Salt Lake Astronomical Society.
Yes.
Right. Very, very interesting experiments and exercise, and one that I challenge anyone to try to debunk right now. Not only did we bring out professionals who have decades of experience with surveying the skies and using some of the most advanced equipment brought to bear, but you had a situation where two noteworthy events occurred in tandem with that sighting. Number one, you had a closed system that was manipulated, where when they went to scan and really focus on that region above the triangle, all of their charts were essentially deleted. None of that data was to be found. They've never had that happen. In decades of experience as astronomers, as professional seasoned astronomers, they've never seen that happen. So having a closed system manipulated in that way, right in the midst of that experiment, was something that caught everyone off guard. And then you combine with that the combination of the rocketry to stimulate a response and the resulting UAP or UFO sighting. And Dr. Taylor and others stated that it was without question a UFO, an object that was prominently displayed up in the sky that everyone witnessed. And it wasn't just the Astronomical Society and our team members that witnessed. I want to go on record and tell you, all of the production professionals that were there to record all of those activities witnessed the same thing. And it was caught from multiple camera views. So you have a multitude of camera and video equipment that are capturing this in real time. You have the electromagnetic and the computer anomalies and malfunctions that are occurring with seemingly no explanation. And to see all of that happen at once during that period of time is quite compelling. And there was no activity. Again, these people are seasoned astronomers. They're checking everything from the satellite tracking charts to everything that they have in celestial orbit, and there's simply nothing that can account for the UFO that appeared right there in front of everyone and was a dazzling display.
Thank you.
That's one thing. I sorry, I just need to interject. But going back to the mesa and the metallic pieces that were drawn out of the mesa as part of that biopsy, if you will, not only having our own analysis capabilities on site that were analyzing the material and finding that it was highly unusual to see those materials right there in wafer thin form, one specific type on one side and then the reverse constituting another. But again, to seek out and to get on record a true expert. I mean, Dr. Ravi Chandran from the University of Utah to weigh in and also confirm the nature of this material independently is something that I think sets our investigation and our program apart. And I've got to say this, you compare our docuseries to any other effort exploring frontier topics like this, and you're not seeing, I'm sorry, with the exception of maybe Linda Moulton Howe, you're not seeing the same talking heads and people that are theorists that you see on other programs that are being used as third-party experts that are weighing in and putting their reputations on the line with respect to their analysis and their experience and their evaluation of what is happening at Skinwalker Ranch. And I could go down the whole list, but you all know, try to find, these people are not the type of people that are trying to sensationalize or seek fame in paranormal circles. These are very respected third-party experts and scientists that we brought in every year in order to collaborate on the experiments and the research that is being conducted. And I don't know that there is enough credit given to that online within the skeptical community. Anyway,
we have to bring Rather into that one because he was the guy who claimed he had blown that up entirely and said those rare earth metals were just like commonly found in that area, I've seen that going around a lot online.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the points where I honestly I felt a little bit potentially deceived by the show and their portrayal of that, and maybe you can help clear this up for me. Sure. And Travis Taylor was talking about how there were two sides of it. One side was tellurium, the other side was europium, and that doesn't seem to be what the expert actually said. The expert, when they were talking about the composition, he listed a bunch of aluminum, other minerals, And then he said there's trace amounts of those two minerals. He didn't say anything about them being, on one side versus the other. And then, additional to that, I just doing a little Google searching, I was able to find that these two elements are present in the Uinta Basin in trace amounts. So finding it isn't nearly as unusual as the show would make it out to be.
No, but finding them on a wafer thin piece and having, I don't know, over 100 examples actually brought out from the mesa, from what I understand, found in that form and that composition it's not only highly unusual, but we have yet to find anyone that can produce anything comparable.
I mean, I'd love to see the actual kind of raw data on that, because my understanding is that the actual expert didn't verify that it was on one side versus the other. My guess is that they probably did a mass spectrometry and kind of ground up a little piece and were able to find what's in there. But I wasn't aware of any, experiment or any findings that would actually verify their hypothesis that it was on one side versus the other.
No, but you had Dr. Ravi go on record saying that it appeared that this was a manufactured, and I can't remember. I should have this at the tip of my fingers, and I apologize for not.
It was fused together, right?
Yeah, that it was fused. That he was acknowledging that it did not seem to be something naturally occurring. And I'm not meaning to take him out of context. I hope I'm not misquoting him or misrepresenting, but that was what we believe was conveyed. And rest assured, the one thing that you can count on is we are going back and revisiting that, and we are investing in the resources and personnel to get to the bottom of what that substance is and what really lies beneath the mesa that has everyone so curious. So we're not giving up. We're not moving on to another experiment and just putting that on the shelf and saying, hey, take our word for it. It's unusual. What you see is a highly unusual, exotic composition of these substances that shouldn't be occurring 420 feet within this mesa. We're going to take it further, and we look forward to revealing that. And frankly, hopefully providing a little bit better, comprehensive explanation. One of the challenges, and you've heard this before, and this sounds like such a cop-out on my part, but it really isn't. One of the challenges with a docuseries format is being able to appropriately address certain claims and certain discoveries or aspects of the investigation. We have kind of a push and pull going on. My partners with the History Channel want to continue pushing the narrative as far as keeping the velocity going and not belaboring one point or getting overly caught up on one aspect of the investigation that people may just gloss over. I mean, let's be honest. Most people have the attention span of, nothing in this world. I mean, to get people to sit down and actually watch a full episode of a docuseries, let alone an entire season, is almost a superhuman feat today. Wouldn't you agree?
That's for sure.
Can I just
keep it moving?
Both Rather and Brandon for addressing that question, because it's come up so many times, and I agree with with Rather that all of those elements do exist in that area. I went and did the checking. But those elements don't exist in really super thin, flat pieces of metal. You get ore, and all those things show up in it. They were dredging out these really flat things. And I hope that we get more information as we go forward with the show. It's like, why would they be these little thin, flat things that look manufactured? If you said, I found a piece of ore that had these 7 elements in it, I'd be like, well, yeah, people have been mining there for ages, right? Yeah. But where did those little flat things come from? I think that's where the investigation has to go.
Yeah, even though we have a lot more work to do in order to determine really what is going on or where we're extracting this material from, it does appear that it's coming off, or at least flaking off, whatever this dome object is that we've been encountering that has thwarted our efforts to drill further within the mesa. So and mean, the natural conclusion is that it's coming off of the dome, that there's some object that we're at least getting this material from and finding out the nature of that object. I mean, there are a couple of other items of interest that are out of place within this mesa that do not seem to match with the narrative or the history of the ranch, or what we've been able to pull up as far as the satellite imagery or the images that were taken even going back to the 1930s and 40s as far as aerial views. And we're going to be analyzing that a bit further in order to determine what is really happening here.
Thanks.
Well, my biggest thing with that experiment was where I felt like it's possibly a contaminated experiment, was that where they got the metals from was that huge container that is used on a lot of other jobs. And how do do they really clean out that container?
It's my understanding that, and I sorry to interject, but it's my understanding that the tank, that container was brand new, that it was completely clean. There wasn't anything in it, that it was inspected. In fact, the team wanted to make sure that there wasn't something that could be questioned relative to the integrity of the equipment that was utilized in concert with that experiment. I wish I had Tom Winterton here on screen with us, because Tom spent countless hours setting up that experiment with the drilling professional. I mean, again, I'm going to keep going back to this. We have engaged experts that are well respected, that have decades of experience, that have subject matter expertise when it comes to whether it be drilling or ground penetrating radar or astronomy, you name it. And to have these people not only participate with the experiments, but also express their own amazement and concern on camera, on record, that's noteworthy. And I'm going to go back a little bit. Christina, you brought up the experiment with the Astronomical Society. What I don't understand, and you guys can enlighten, in fact, rather, you're the resident skeptic here. Do you think that all those guys were just stupid, that they didn't know what they were doing, that they actually were all having a delusional experience all at once, and that they were incompetent and didn't know how their equipment operated, and that this was just something that you could explain away? What is your explanation for the entire exercise with the astronomers?
Well, no, I don't think that's stupid. I think that they're probably very, very smart people. But I think that even the most prepared and the most smart, individuals, Murphy's Law still does apply, right? Things can go wrong, and they often do go wrong in the worst situations. I've done, personal demos and stuff like that, and no matter how hard you prepare, things do go wrong. So I think that to really, my answer to that is I don't know what happened, but I'd love to see that repeated, to see if that's actually a repeatable thing that happens every time they try this.
The equipment malfunctions and a lot of the equipment malfunctions coupled with UFO sightings in concert with that is repeatable. I mean, you take the UAPX team, the whole night visions episode where the UAPX team comes out. Not only did they have constant equipment malfunction and failure, but in the midst of that failure, not unlike what the Astronomical Society encountered, what happened?
Yeah, somebody fainted.
Remember?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, let's be serious about this. We had an acute medical episode. We had totally unexplained equipment malfunctions. I mean, they claim that they've never seen anything like this, where their equipment is literally powered down right there.
How hot is it out there doing these experiments? That's the one thing that goes through my mind, is that are these people, heat stroke and, very high sun can make batteries drain and stuff like that.
When they're not out there doing the experiments, they're being well fed. They're in the security. They're in the command center. They're being waited on appropriately. So I don't think that these people are out in like this the midst.
You're not
of this
working them to
desert.
exhaustion.
Yeah, no, we have a very sophisticated operation, and we have a very, I think, well-stocked facility that takes good care of its people and its personnel. So and it's not like these people are being subjected to harsh conditions, nor is the equipment really being subjected to unusually harsh conditions. And I'm just going back to the repeatability. When you have experts like the UAPX team and their experience, and you have the combination of, acute medical episodes that occur in tandem with experimental activity, that is coupled with the electromagnetic anomalies and the equipment malfunction, and then you have all of a sudden caught on camera genuine UFO UAP sightings. I think after that being repeated in a number of different settings with different experts, different witnesses participating, it ceases to be just a coincidence or something that can be easily dismissed, and it becomes part of a data set that is robust and very difficult to dismiss or explain away, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I think that it's definitely very interesting data. I would say that to really be rigorous about the scientific method, though, I think that instead of having different experts, you'd kind of need to do it with the same expert, with the same equipment over and over again to really, really narrow it down. But I agree with you that it is definitely very, very interesting.
And we have done that. I mean, we've brought back Pete Kelsey. I mean, I think 5 different times. Pete Kelsey, who's been kind of one of our go-to experts when it comes to LIDAR and FLIR and also photogrammetry, which I can't wait to get into here if we get a moment.
Yeah.
Just to your point, rather, which is a great point, we have brought back those experts, those third-party experts that have been witness to and have taken data that does not have a conventional explanation in order to see, A, whether that data is repeatable, and B, whether under the same or similar conditions we see something interesting and we see the same type of result. The exercise with the rabbi, which was not season 3, but back in season 2, I think it's important to note that, that not only being a compelling episode and experiment with the FLIR camera system that saw true environmental change that was unaccounted for and activity, but when we ended up repeating that exercise, I'm sure you all remember, we went back and repeated the audio from that experiment, and what happened? We saw a similar change rate with reference to the temperature. Right. And the environment. In fact, we saw other things happen that were unusual that the team all witnessed, that was captured on camera. And I think, again, the repeatability and being able to document and provide a full data set is part of not only the scientific method, but it's part of preparing for peer review. And I love all of the high-minded, self-righteous judgment online of people saying, where's your peer review? Until you subject this to peer review, we're not going to accept any of this as valid. And I think that that's not only unfair, but that's irresponsible. You can't truly have peer review until you actually conduct enough research and have gathered in a methodical, responsible fashion enough data to actually study and turn over to third parties to be able to review and to carefully evaluate. Am I right?
Yeah, I think we can
fair.
all agree that everyone would like to see Rather be brought out to Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh yeah.
To challenge these ideas, and then when he's abducted by aliens and no one sees him again, but you get it on camera, then we've got the answer.
Yeah,
we need.
discussion over. Discussion over.
Discussion ends.
Real quick. Let me bring on UFO Jane. She's finally able to join us. Jane, how are you doing?
Hi, Brandon. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Well, real quick, I just wanted to just point this out.
God, 5 of my favorite people. I actually, even though we've never met in person, I actually really, really enjoy the diversity and frankly the differences of opinion and the different skill sets that you all bring to the table. And I'm not meaning to blow smoke here, but I may not get this opportunity for some time into the future, but I just want to tell you it's rare in the same way that I think our effort is rare as far as pulling together a multidisciplinary team of investigators and experts. I actually would say within the YouTube space and within the public domain and social media, it's very, very rare that you see a group of people that can respectfully disagree with each other and bring different perspective and skill set. And at the end of the day, agree to disagree and also be able to come together and agree on that which does warrant further consideration. Anyways,
I really
Yeah.
appreciate that because it's been a tough go the last few months because we do that. We do challenge our own belief systems, our own perspectives, and I think that's important to have the conversations just as long as we're not leaving the table mad at each other. And I don't think we've ever done that once. And that's sort of the first thing, right? Is none of this is personal. We're all just trying to get answers. And why is it not okay to ask questions? Why do you have to get upset?
Yeah, Lou, it's so funny. I'm a relative newcomer to this space. I mean, I've spent my entire adult life focused on commercial real estate and starting other companies, and have not ventured into this realm until just the last couple of years with respect to Skinwalker Ranch and going public. And I'm surprised at how many people, how do I say this?
Luke, can you take me offline for a couple minutes?
Yeah, I can do that.
Got to do one thing real.
Yeah,
go for it.
This field of what people refer to as ufology, I will go on record and say that in general, the so-called experts and talking heads have been their own worst enemies. They will eat their own young. I've been shocked at the lack of support that you see within the community, and I would say to those who are truly skeptical and critical of these topics, I would say 90% of the time they're just sitting back and just laughing because they don't even have to say anything. All they have to do is sit back and watch the so-called believers and enthusiasts essentially crucify each other in the arena. And it's no wonder that it's taken decades for a lot of these topics to start being taken seriously. I mean, the disinformation campaigns that have been persistent since the late 40s to present day that have been really strategically positioned to ridicule these topics and to, I think, make people feel that they aren't safe to come forward. You look at all of the pilots. I mean, the countless pilots, radar technicians, and other professionals, even law enforcement that have elected for decades to not speak out, even when they know, even when they have firsthand experience, to not speak out because they fear ridicule or they fear that they're going to be attacked or that their credibility is going to be completely wiped away. I mean, one of the things that I've been really proud of with our effort is we've provided a forum, a safe place where people feel like they can finally come forward and tell their stories and share the very real experiences they've had. I think it's important to note that you take, in the case of Deputy Sheriff Chris Porritt, he had never gone on record relative to his experiences outside of close family and friends. This is a gentleman that had reported on the ranch as a law enforcement officer back in the 1980s to inspect cattle mutilations and other strangeness. And you didn't see him on the UFO circuit. You didn't see him trying to gain any fame or attention. Yet when we finally demonstrated that we could be trusted and that we are approaching these topics with a level of professionalism and integrity, thank heavens, he finally agreed to come forward. But it was only after seeing that we were handling it with the degree of professionalism that had not been seen before. So again, not to pat myself on the back, but I just want to say that a lot of these things get lost in the noise, in all of the tinkling cymbals and sounding brass that accompanies these topics within the skeptical media and whatnot. I think there is often a failure to hear the voices, the signal that rises up from the noise that is truly unimpeachable. When you have law enforcement, when you have, trained, technicians, when you have fighter pilots, people who've served in official capacity, like the gentleman who came out with the UAPX team, and they're willing to go on record and not only subject themselves to potential criticism, but to also participate in experiments and research activities to hopefully understand what they've witnessed and what they believe, to be true. It's pretty exciting. Anyhow, sorry to be verbose.
No, that's okay. I mean, look, we know the UAPX guys. We know Jimmy McGowan, and I talked to him on the phone about that whole episode, and he was like, he really passed out. And it's one thing hearing it from you, and then there's another thing hearing it from another person who, before the show, you guys hadn't talked on that kind of level, and then for him to come out of it going, oh yeah, no, there's something happened to him. Like that, I was like, okay, that's very interesting at the very least. But there's two things I noticed, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jane. In the discussion between Mick West and Eric Weinstein on Kurt Jimungo's channel, Theory of Everything, Eric Weinstein mentioned you twice, and he really, once in how he held you in an incredibly high regard with the story that you told and the walk of life that you're in, and how these three things, when they come together, they produce a really incredible and almost tangible story, tangible enough that it really influenced Eric Weinstein, someone who really wrote this topic off as just BS. It really was part of his influence to sort of change his way of thinking and open up his mind on what we're talking about, what we could possibly be dealing with, and to a point where he apologized to the community, and he referenced you as being sort of an influence on that. But he did also say that, because one of their contentions in the argument was, well, there's no real scientific study going on at Skinwalker Ranch.
I don't think did you hear Eric say that?
He didn't say that. He didn't
say that. Mick West said that. Mick West claimed that, I have yet to see the data, which is just, Well, he said, and the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I think this is what this is what I take away from it. And this is, I think, what a lot of people take away from the show is that I think at the surface level, the television show doesn't show the science that really is going on the ranch, because what Eric Weinstein took from the show was, I don't see the science there, but that doesn't mean they're not doing science. I might go to the ranch and see, oh, okay, there's actually a whole plethora of science data. There's a whole system that these guys have done that hasn't been shown on this show. And okay, it is actually a scientific experiment. I think that's what's going on here, is that the people that go to the ranch and see the command center and see the data you guys collecting, and even the people like Christina, and we're going to be covering it on the show, the web portal, the Skinwalker Ranch web portal that you guys are doing, which I think is phenomenal. You guys are having conversations there. You're sharing data there. And like you said, and I think everyone on this panel can agree, the scientific process takes a lot of time. And just because we're not seeing every aspect of it doesn't mean it's not happening. And I think people watch the show and go, that's not science. Yeah. Well, the key is what you just said. The key words were not seeing every aspect of it.
Correct.
I will beg to disagree with anyone saying that they're not seeing any science on this show, that they're not seeing the scientific method, or they're not seeing scientific principles or investigative protocols followed. Because Eric Bard, for example, Eric Bard never wanted to be part of any television effort. And this is someone I've worked with for over 12 years. That has been a principal investigator with other companies and other enterprises. He's an inventor. He holds numerous patents. He's actually taken innovations from the idea stage all the way to commercialization. Eric Bard is no slouch. He's credentialed, he's serious, he's sober-minded, and he, even though a lot of his work can't be properly showcased or elaborated on the program, it is the foundation for the scientific platforms and a lot of the investigative work that you see played out and highlighted. And I think that's probably the best way of characterizing a lot of what is presented on the docuseries is, to a degree, it's a highlight reel. I mean, 90 to 95% of what is actually recorded, documented, ends up, unfortunately, on the cutting room floor in service to simply being able to serve up a cohesive documentary record and narrative. I will say there's nothing untrue. There's nothing fabricated, contrived, or faked. It's just simply, it's trying to please everyone. And sometimes in the process of trying to please everyone, you please no one at all, right? You've heard that old adage. That's the place that I find myself in most often. It's when you're trying to speak to so many different people and so many different audiences, from scientists to enthusiasts to investigative journalists, which we've welcomed out to the ranch. That's another thing. I would challenge anyone to find any other effort relative to the paranormal or these type of frontier topics where investigative journalists have been given a peek behind the curtain, full access to look at the data, to interview the team, to look at the integrity of the systems. Good luck. Good luck. Find me any other effort.
Yeah.
And if that isn't demonstrating the integrity of our scientific investigation, I don't know what else is. And I do so sometimes to the great frustration and detriment of my team. But I feel like, and again, I opened with this comment at the very beginning of our discussion. As long as you have the truth on your side, as long as you're operating with truth and transparency, full disclosure, let the chips fall. You have nothing to fear. One thing I do fear is being ignorant and not having the data, not being able to appropriately address or account for certain claims that are made or certain theories. And that's where I think, for instance, I love your critical perspective, because it challenges us to do a better job of presenting the data. Because what you see the team basically conducting an analysis of the material brought out of the mesa and finding that it's highly unusual, it's exciting, and then cut. You go to a later scene where they show up there at the University of Utah meeting with Dr. Ravi, and he's providing his perspective, and you really don't see a recap or an analysis with a spreadsheet showing, well, these are the things that we find most interesting and frankly most compelling relative to what we brought out. This is why we're going to spend an incredible amount of money in order to further explore what is going on here. This is not a publicity stunt. This is true scientific exploration at its best. And oftentimes, just because of the docuseries format and the realities of trying to please so many different masters, a lot of that detail that you and I will appreciate ends up not being given proper audience. So anyways, Lou, team, I'll turn it back over to you. I don't mean to do all the talking.
No, that's okay. Jane, I wanted to open it up to you because you got in a little late. So go ahead and ask any question you want.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be a square in this stream today. And I know I've been pretty critical of this season, but of the show overall, especially this last episode that recapped everything, kind of got me, I don't know, just like extra excited again and looking forward to the next season. But speaking of Eric Weinstein, though, and then just, I think it says a lot, Brandon, that you're here. And despite my critiques of the different episodes of this season, you've always been very transparent and, ready to answer, the tough questions, as Lou says. I think that says a lot. But speaking of Eric Weinstein, I think he actually mentioned in the Mick West interview a theory I've had about the ranch. And I wonder, to the persistent pieces of evidence that I see at the ranch are the radiation spikes and the effects on people's health, like passing out, headaches,
Yeah, acute medical episodes that accompany experimental activity.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I have to wonder, okay, could the radiation, also be linked, and could there be a man-made explanation, or not man-made actually, but a natural explanation? Because something that does happen in Utah is you have, I think it's radon winds, like from the uranium decay, and then uranium mining can cause radioactive pollution, and apparently it's especially extreme in Utah. So have you guys explored any of that?
Sure. And not only have we explored it, that we put our money where our mouth is, and we brought out, oh boy, I've lost track of the number of times that we've actually brought out Qualtech associates, Semper Environmental, and we've got a group called Guideline Geo, all highly credentialed. I mean, these are groups, you take Casey Smith with Qualtech, who has appeared on every season. We've brought him out on countless occasions to actually conduct tests, soil tests of the environment to see if there's any trace of radioactive material or anything that would create concern before commencing experimental activity. This is a guy who has done extensive work at Los Alamos National Laboratory, Idaho National Lab, and works with countless government and private sector clientele. And the fact that he keeps coming back, going on record, and frankly validating the fact that these radiation and elevated the how do I say this? The dangerous levels of radiation and other electromagnetic forces and elevated RF that we've seen in tandem with experimental activities out at the ranch are transient. They are truly transient, and they've appeared consistently in tandem with experimental activity. They don't show up when there's no experimental activity, and we've had lulls. We've had periods of time where we've brought them out where there's nothing, where we try to establish a proper baseline or a control, if you will, in the area, and then everything's turned upside down when we end up going forward and conducting experiments. That's one of the things that really agitates Dragon. And that's why I think he has permanent bitch face out there all the time, is because he constantly is thwarted. Every time he thinks that it's safe and that there's really not going to be anything unusual or anything elevated, after everyone tests the area for anything that would be of concern, something happens. I think it's important to note when Thomas Lewis ended up having his cardiac episode and being run to the emergency room right there, simultaneous with the activity of digging into the mesa, and hearing that frequency being broadcast that really had no conventional explanation. Do you know that his sensor that he had on his person was not reading anything unusual? We didn't get any warning that there was something about to occur that would cause him to be brought to his knees and then run to the hospital. That is one of the most frustrating aspects of this investigation. It is not predictable. It's transient. And just when you think that nothing is going to happen, something happens when you put your guard down. So I that's a long-winded answer to your question.
That's a great answer.
But the direct answer is, oh my goodness. If you paid attention to the last 3 seasons, we bring back the leading environmental testing experts every time to engage with the team, to conduct tests both before and after the experiments take place. We have all that data, and those people continue to go on record with the fact that they've never seen anything like Skinwalker Ranch, ever.
Jazz,
can I jump in?
Yeah.
That was on my list. Brandon, I ask tough questions, and you and I've spoken in the background. I've noticed a confluence of different tech subjects when it comes to the radiation, and we see a lot of stuff on social media asking about this. A lot is made about the 1.6 gigahertz thing. We talked to Dragon about this earlier in the season, That's in the L band that the FCC regulates. It's used for almost nothing except for handheld satellite phones, because that's the most efficient frequency to broadcast from a big clunky thing you hold in your hand out into space to a satellite back down to something else. But that's RF radiation. And in this episode, the Roundup episode, we also we keep seeing, and maybe this is just bad language when it's being edited, conflating that with gamma radiation. That's very different. Gamma radiation is not RF radiation,
No.
and that's. I'll just toss this out there. Gamma radiation is like 10 to the 13th hertz compared to anything in the radio spectrum, and I do wonder if people get confused a little bit when you talk about people getting irradiated at the same time you're seeing this 1.6. That
Right.
1.6, that's something.
It's totally
That's-
different. I know.
It's
And
totally
We're
weird.
getting wires. Some of the wires get crossed, frankly, by our editors that are, and it's not.
Okay.
It's not that they're meaning to.
So you're not implying the 1.6 is radiating people.
No. What happens sometimes? There's so much going on at once,
Right.
And frankly, they're trying to stitch together a cohesive record of everything that is coming in, all of the systems and what has been reported. That sometimes, I think the editors, not the scientists, not Dr. Taylor or Eric Bard, or even some of our third-party experts that are engaged. It's not that they're confused or that they're ignorant or they're idiots. It's that sometimes it gets lost in translation or confused in translation. That's
Okay.
something that we need.
All right.
We frankly need to do a better job of doing that. And I think, again, there's never been a show like this. There's never been a docuseries that actually brings this level of technical expertise to the table relative to these topics. And that's the challenge, is trying to make sure that there's a cohesive and frankly a responsibly documented record that comes through with the docuseries without confusing everyone, including our own people who end up.
But you can see how, people watching the show, if they have any experience, if they're just watching this edited version,
Sure.
they could conflate those things, and then they're like, "What are you talking about?"
That's
So,
where to
it's
some degree
a little confusing.
Yeah, to some degree, as much as there may be some isolated instances of confusion or wires getting crossed, I tell people, please bear in mind, we do have third-party experts that are there, that are going on record, that are obviously helping us guide these experiments. And these are credentialed people. These aren't just theorists, if you will. These aren't just talking heads that are trying to get screen time. These are actual professionals that are engaged. And sometimes the problem with television is, and the editing process is, sometimes a lot of just those key sound bites or explanatory notes don't actually get put with the right commentary. So anyways, that sounds like a bunch of excuse making on my part, but it's in actuality, I'm just trying to account for.
No, thank you for answering the question. I appreciate it. I'm just saying, people that are watching the tech details have expressed those questions, and it's good you're addressing that answer, and I appreciate it.
No, valid questions.
And that's what's so special about you and your team, Brandon, is that you're very transparent. You accept all of the questions regardless of who those people may be. And that's something that I really appreciate from you and your team. And something that I really want to talk about is the Insider Project. And I wish the naysayers and critics could get on it and do the free trial to see what's happening. And that's what I love. And the community is growing, and it's very cohesive in working with each other to find out what's going on. And what I like most about it is that anyone now can become part of the research, a pair of eyes watching the feed from several cameras simultaneously. And I've seen the community grow from the beginning, and everyone is very proactive, logging anomalies in a spreadsheet. I mean, so many insiders are taking their own initiatives with studying the anomalies being captured on the live cam. And then you have the transparency factor, the ability to be able to talk with members of your team in the live chat and in Q&A sessions. So
where do you have that sorry to interject, Christina, but that's another thing. Where on this planet can you actually have a live chat almost daily with a principal investigator that is stationed either up on the International Space Station or Area 51 or any other site, and that will literally openly engage and provide feedback and details? It's unprecedented.
It is. It is unprecedented to be able to have that amount of openness. And as I keep saying, I really believe we will never see disclosure from the government. There are too many deep-seated interests, in my opinion. But we are most likely to get disclosure from the research going on the ranch. And you, Brandon, are making it possible for everyone to get involved with that research. And I really appreciate that.
No, thank you. And again, I try to show by action that we really do appreciate the public, and we believe that this is a collaborative effort. You know, one of the things that we posted, I mean, we kicked off season 3 with flying out former Governor Herbert. And again, I don't think people understand the significance of bringing out probably the most popular governor in the United States over years. I mean, he served as governor for 12 years, has worked on so many projects, still maintains relationships in Washington, D.C., has a very, very real serious interest in the ranch. In fact, he's been asking for years, even when he was the sitting active governor, he was asking for updates, asking for reports on what was happening out in the basin. And, the pandemic got in the way. I'll be quite candid. I mean, he was going to come out a lot sooner, but, we've all been dealing with a crazy period of time in the world's history. And it's a miracle that we are able to continue our work and to continue consistently doing all of this. But to have Governor Herbert come out there, along with so many other officials and credentialed people that are now finally coming forward. One thing that was reported in episode 1 that you saw real time was the National Science Foundation jet, the Gulfstream 5, which I think is like a $60 million piece of equipment that was over 45,000 feet above the ranch, conducting what we believe to be a highly unusual survey. Now, there are a lot of conventional explanations. I'm well aware of what you can Google and what you can pull down, but I've got to give tribute to your own Jazz Shaw here. Jazz goes out there and presents a FOIA request, and instead of giving us what could be an easy alibi or an explanation for why that flight was tasked to Utah and conducting that survey, what did they say, Jazz?
Are we okay to talk about this?
Sure, bring it on.
Well, originally we weren't going to talk about this because it could endanger Brandon's project. They originally came back when I went without, and just to be clear, Brandon didn't ask me to do this. You guys know me. When I hear weird things from the government, I file FOIA requests. That's what I do for a living, And I went and contacted Brandon, and I said, hey, I'm filing this thing. And they came back, and my initial response was, oh, this is an easy request. They have a category for that. It's like, oh, you're asking about a plane that flew somewhere. Yeah, we can find that out. And then after a long delayed period, I got a response saying, we've processed your request. We have no responsive documents, and they shut it off. And now I have filed a series of appeals with both the FAA and the National Weather Service, and we're still waiting to get answers back. And initially, it sounded like the most easy thing in the world to answer, and now they've just totally shut down.
Yeah.
And we've been working on this. I sent all the information to Brandon. I wasn't going to talk about it publicly until Brandon was willing to talk about it, because I don't want to risk, his operation there. But yeah, they've been bucking us big time.
Well, and you're not the only one that's been bucked, and I'm not going to. I have to be respectful of certain people and maintain certain confidences. Sure. I don't want to breach anyone's trust, but I will tell you.
I wasn't going to talk about it until you were ready to. Well, by the way,
but I appreciate you sounding off, and I sorry to put you on the spot, Jazz, but you're one of many witnesses to the fact that something doesn't add up.
No,
it just doesn't add up. And
not at all.
With that, anyone, Christina, I appreciate you bringing up the Insider. If you go on the Insider, guess what you'll see? You'll see, for instance, you'll see a full documented account of a Black Hawk helicopter tasked from the U.S. Army to the ranch conducting a survey over the triangle at just over 5,000 feet above the triangle and departing the airspace, which is something we've seen and tracked on a regular basis since we started this investigation.
Yep.
What does this all mean? I don't know. How is this data useful? How does this help us understand what is happening at the ranch? I don't know. All I do know is that there are completely different agencies that are tasking very expensive equipment in service to surveying the area directly above the ranch. And you can only pass this off as oil and gas exploration surveys and methane gas survey mundane efforts that are being conducted. There's only so many times that you can explain or dismiss it off into that realm or category. It's uncanny how often that we see various agencies engaged in trying to monitor the ranch, and thankfully we've been documenting those incidents.
And when you see the answer that I got that Brandon is talking about, which I can't release yet, which we have appealed, you will see what a crazy answer it was. It was nothing to do with, it might be about, something with the environment or whatever. No, it was nuts. You'll find out later, and Brandon will tell you when he's ready. It's not my job to do that. But yeah, it's been some crazy stuff.
Yeah. So let's open it up for more questions. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. No. Don't be sorry. This is all great. I love it. So I've been getting some flack that I haven't asked you tough questions. So I don't know if it's a tough question more than just a tough suggestion. I was very critical of the rockets. To me, I think it's the least effective tool to grab data from, because the window of time to collect data is so short. And also it seems like the rockets explode, and they also sometimes they get lost depending on what's going on with the wind and whatever. I really want to see an experiment where we have a balloon system of some kind, a weather balloon system of some kind, tethered from the ground at that height that stays there for the whole season. And I thought one of the coolest experiments you guys had was in episode 10, but it was only one segment, and it was the drone that did a whole scan of the entire property. I think it would be so cool to run that drone while you're launching rockets. If you get an anomaly while you're doing that, now you might have a three-dimensional sort of image of a UAP that pops up. Because to me, and I think I finally figured this out, this show, and at least to me what the show's trying to express, is that we're poking the hornet's nest and we're just trying to see what happens.
It's stimulating activity.
And
here's the thing, in service to the scientific method, Lou, when certain experiments are conducted and you see interactions, you see things appear, one of the criticisms we get is, you're so quick to go to another experiment. Well, what we've tried to do with the rocketry, with the instrumented rocketry, is we have truly tried to repeat those experiments in order to, and utilize more advanced implementations of those rockets mean, we bring in Lock Precision is probably the leading private sector, rocket specialist group that we could bring out to actually conduct these exercises. These guys aren't these guys aren't just hobbyists who do this on the side. This is what they do professionally, and they have tried to work with the team to come up with even more rigorous implementations of these rocketry experiments in order to get the interactions and to poke the hornet's nest. With reference to the balloon, with the weather balloon or the instrumented balloon experiments, you're going to see more of that. There is a lot that we have not been able to show as of yet that we're still compiling. Well,
you're filming season 4 right now, I'm assuming.
Well, there's no official announcement yet, but I think it's a pretty safe assumption.
Yeah, well, I know you guys film in the summer, right?
Yeah, so there is a lot going on, and we'll see. I mean, it's a combination of going back and revisiting that which has actually produced results that are measurable, and also delving into other things. For example, the photogrammetry that you saw featured in episode 10 that I feel was compelling. And I was a little disappointed when I heard that there was a science score of like 2, when for the first time ever, I don't know of any other program or investigation that has brought this type of resource. And one of the things that came up was relative to the cost. And I want to give you guys a few talking points.
Yeah.
The cost associated with that whole exercise is in the tens of thousands of dollars.
What was the most expensive part of the experiment?
In fact, the photogrammetry, that's at least at minimum, that's $4,000 to $10,000 a day in order to conduct all of that. It's not something that is cheap. I mean, you take the equipment, and I've asked for some details. I mean, Pete Kelsey uses a ZenMuse P1 camera with a DJI M300 RTK drone, and post-processing utilizing Pix4 DMATIC software, which in his opinion is an incredible suite of equipment.
I think I made the mistake of assuming the cost on it just being a drone operator. But it's not just being a drone operator. It's also the fact that he's got a camera that nobody else has on that drone. So therefore it's a little bit more expensive. So I totally understand that.
No, and that's why I love to jump in, and I love this opportunity to be able to provide some clarity. These experiments are not cheap. These aren't being done by a bunch of half-assed hobbyists.
Does production help you pay for any of these experiments at all?
Yes. So the good news with this History Channel docuseries is they help subsidize a lot of the experimentation and the efforts, and that's something that I'm happy with. That helps minimize the money pit effect that is part and parcel of running this investigation. But they've been an incredible partner, especially for 3 to 4 months out of the year. The other 8 months, of course, and beyond were, of course, completely privately funded. But back to the photogrammetry, there's another thing to take into consideration, and that is, for every day of survey work or shooting, there's probably 4 days of processing and analysis by professionals that takes place in order to properly pull together all of that data. And it's utilizing, in many cases, more than one software tool or suite to be able to verify and analyze the results. But the fact that you saw those anomalies in 2 regions of the ranch and that they were in alignment with the megalithic site or the stone circle is something that you can expect us to revisit and also look to delve into. But I felt like that was a showstopper. So when bringing a technology and a survey approach like photogrammetry to the table in order to actually verify potentially anomalous structures above the ranch and revealing that all to both Governor Herbert, investigative journalist George Knapp, and an entire team, I thought that was a fitting finale and conclusion to what was an extremely eventful season. And I have to say, season 3, I'm biased because I'm the proud father, and so I look at my children, my domain here with pride. But I have to say that I feel like we advanced the investigation to a whole other level with season 3, and that's manifest in you go down all the episodes. Everything from bringing out the governor to the UAPX team, to the astronomers, to the Salt Lake Astronomical Society. Hell, we even brought Colonel John B. Alexander, the spook of all time. I mean, how many decades have ufologists clamored for any interview or anything with John B. Alexander? Yet we bring him out on site, interacting with the team, showing where the portal activity existed. I don't know why people weren't pissing their pants over that, but they're too busy going back to just anecdotal evidence and stories from yesteryear.
We're
and
spoiled,
not
Brandon.
To the stuff we're producing today.
We're very spoiled.
Bunch of spoiled entitled.
We want to see.
It's like you
Skinwalker
deliver a Ferrari, and
film.
you're like, oh, could you have painted it a different color? Could you get me different wheels? That's what I feel like has happened with the community, and sometimes it's amusing, but sometimes it's
frustrating.
It's so frustrating because we have produced an embarrassment of riches, proving the reality that there really is something to Skinwalker Ranch.
Well, I've said this a few times, that we have the really easy job. This panel has a really easy job of playing Monday morning quarterback and sort of sitting on our armchair and going, I don't believe that. That's not good enough for me, because we're not there. And
where's the data? Where's the science? You're like saying, I don't know. There wasn't really that much science. And I'm like, are you kidding me? We just showed the most advanced photogrammetry surveys of the ranch, of any property, forget the ranch, but any property. And these things aren't faked.
Yeah. I gave the photogrammetry a low science score, and I just kind of like to defend my position, and maybe you can clarify, and I might be misunderstanding things, but it's my understanding that it's essentially the drone is taking pictures, 2D pictures, and then software is reconstructing that into a 3D image, right? So correct. I struggle to even understand how these anomalies could be anything other than just a software artifact. Well, like, are you seeing something interesting?
Okay, good question. Good statement. However, bear in mind, the survey that you saw there that was conducted within a very tightly controlled area, there were over 30,000 images that were captured. And the drone, the instrumented drone with the photogrammetry equipment, was capturing thousands and thousands of images from every conceivable angle in order to construct not only an incredibly accurate view of the landscape, but also capturing these anomalies. Now, it'd be one thing if it were picking up a few random pixelized anomalies or artifacts. But when you have thousands of images bouncing off of something that is there, it's whether it be a gravitational anomaly that is creating it, or whether it be an actual physical object that is being cloaked from the human eye. I don't know. Sorry to interject. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's one thing that is lost is we're talking about thousands of processed images that create the depiction of what was revealed to me and to the governor and the team. And it's hard to.
Well, yeah, I guess my question though is if it's, cloaking to the human eye, if you looked at the source pictures, do you think that you would see like some weird things there that the camera is picking up that the eye isn't picking up? And I guess the second question is, I guess you kind of answered this by saying that it's a very costly experiment. But if you did this again with a drone and the same technique, and you found those anomalies in the same places, then I think that would convince me that, there is something really going on there.
Get ready.
All right. Ready. I like that.
Yeah. But also bear in mind, we're talking about just to conduct the experiment and the analysis over days. it is not as easy as just putting a drone up in the air and doing a real estate tour. I know how that goes. And I think a lot of the general public equates a lot of our survey work and experimental activity to something that they see that is consumer grade or that is conducted in the private sector with a residential real estate tour or something like that. And it's far more involved. It's far more technically engaged as far as the parameters and everything that is brought to bear. And it's not something that you can just run constantly. One thing that is also lost, the weather patterns out there can be pretty erratic. So sometimes we have to call off experiments because there is a microburst, there is a huge storm system that comes through just randomly, and being able to conduct these experiments in an environment where we can actually take data with integrity and be able to see it all the way through. Sometimes it's a bit tricky. That's why we shoot primarily during the summer and fall and not the winter with some of these more aggressive experimental activities, is because the weather is so harsh and unforgiving during the winter months. I hate it out there during the winter. I have a hard time because that soil, that clay, is so difficult to navigate around. Not to get off on a weather tangent. Bring on some hard questions.
No, let's crowdfund getting Rather out there. Let's send Rather out to Skinwalker Ranch. Get a crowdfunding thing. Just send him out there. Rather, go sit out there on the butte for a couple of weeks. Let's send a crew out there.
I am skeptical, but I'll admit I'm a little bit scared.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, Rather, and I'll take the conch back here. Eric Weinstein, who I love, I actually have great respect. I think he's a brilliant scientist and thinker. He, as you saw on that program, he verified. He's been invited several times and elected not to accept the invitation, not because he thought that there wasn't a scientific investigation or that it wouldn't bear fruit. It was concerns over safety, and very valid concerns over safety. But I will say he did send his closest associates, who he hosted, who have gone back and reported to him the results of a day briefing that occurred, reviewing all of the scientific platforms and really engaging with Eric Bard and the team. And that's why you see him taking a very different tone than Mick West. And it's because he knows that we're conducting a truly scientific investigation out there, and we are professionals. And the thing I respect about Mick West, I respect that he's a gentleman. I don't agree with him. I think that no matter, you could show him a flying saucer. I'm convinced you could land a flying saucer on his front yard and it wouldn't make any difference. It's not going to change his opinion. And I find that to be the case with virtually every professional skeptic. You take some of these so-called journalists that are skeptical journalists, and I think that they are more dishonest, more biased, more dogmatic than some of the most crazy believers. And I think that that's sad, especially when a lot of these people end up being given audience or being given credibility in scientific journals when they're bringing the same degree of dogmatic bias to the table and they're unwilling to look at hard evidence or keep an open mind. I think you have to question their credibility and you have to throw out everything that they bring to the table.
Keith Court. All right.
Yeah.
Are we doing Keith right now? Jeez.
No, I'm just saying.
No, let's not do Keith. No, I don't think Mick is that much different.
It's the general audience, but it's fun to engage. And again, I think critical thinking helps drive us to be better. I think as long as it's done with an open mind and respectful, I think that great things can happen. And by the way, this ranch and this ranch investigation in this docuseries is a microcosm of that. Dr. Taylor flat out told me that he thought this was all a bunch of baloney. He did not think that there was any credibility to the claims when he was brought out to the ranch and beforehand. When he kind of sat back and smiled at the team during that first briefing in my boardroom downtown Salt Lake, that was a sincere dialogue that occurred between the team, where he honestly, in his words, he called us all batshit crazy, and everyone kind of chuckled about it. And of course, Dr. Taylor has gone from being a skeptic and a critic to being not a believer. He's like me. He's an experiencer. He can't deny that which he's witnessed with his own eyes above the ranch, and with his own eyes with the equipment and all of the other platforms that we brought to bear. So it's interesting to see how we've all evolved over the last several years.
Well, I want to get into these audience questions now and try to rifle through them as quickly as we can, because I don't want to keep everybody too long. But Jazz, if you can, your headset volume, can you turn it down just a little? I could hear it coming back just a little bit. And if you guys have any questions, I think that's better. If you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in at any time. But since you're speaking about Travis Taylor, there was a question from one of our members, and he asks, how did Brandon feel about having someone secretly working for the government on the inside of his team relaying info to them? It goes to the discussion of the Black Hawk.
It's a good question. I was shocked when Dr. Taylor revealed to us just weeks ago. It wasn't that long ago that he actually went public with the fact that he was the chief scientist for the Pentagon's UAP task force. I didn't know what to think. I had a hard time processing it. I feel a lot better about it now. I feel like he has honored his NDAs with us. I will tell you that Eric Bard is our principal investigator and guides the scientific investigation. And Eric was never swayed or directed or manipulated in any way by Travis. Not that Travis would do that, but just to be candid, just to put everything on the table. Dragon was irate. I don't know that I've ever seen Dragon more angry in private exchanges within our group than when Dr. Taylor came forward with that revelation. I actually find, so I'm going to take a positive approach with this. I'm going to say honestly, I haven't seen Dr. Taylor compromise his integrity with respect to our investigation. He's always deferred to Eric Bard and the team. He's been a collaborative resource. And I would say the fact that he was appointed chief scientist of that task force after engaging at Skinwalker Ranch, and I think in large part he was brought in by the Pentagon to lead that effort because of his work at Skinwalker Ranch. I think it, to a large degree, it validates the fact that they know that people in government circles know darn well that what we're doing is genuine, that there is truly unexplained phenomena on this property. I have yet to see any evidence of government intervention, or even manipulation. The only thing I see is the continued survey work that seems to come from different agencies that I don't believe is orchestrated in any way. I don't think that they're organizing this in any type of orchestrated or organized fashion. I think that there are different factions that are trying to study the reality of this and trying to get a peek behind the curtain. And we see that evidenced with our surveillance platforms and the data that we've been taking. But that's a long-winded answer. I actually see it as a positive, and I see Travis Taylor's credibility within the Pentagon and within the scientific community being an asset, not a liability. He has yet to do anything to compromise his relationship with me.
Lou, can I ask the hard question nobody wants to ask?
Sure.
And I work with Brandon on a regular basis. Did you ever know before the news broke that someone on your team was working with the government at the same time that the government was clearly spying on your activities, which we know about with other things? Did you ever know about that, or was this a
Absolutely not.
complete bombshell to you?
It was a bombshell. It was an absolute bombshell. The first I heard about it, I'll tell you right now. I'm pulling it up on my text. This is where we were all in a state of shock.
Well, while you're looking that up, I guess maybe if you can answer this question.
It was in May.
In May?
Yeah, it was in May, and I had no idea. In fact, one of the things I'm most proud of with our investigation is that it is in the private sector, and it will remain, as long as I have any say, it will remain private sector, and it will remain engaged with the public. I believe these topics, as much as there may be a national security interest, I think that these topics deserve public engagement, and people have a right to know. And I'm right there with you, chief among you, in championing the effort to bring the truth forward. I know this is real. I mean, I went from being a skeptic to an experiencer, and it's been a sobering, humbling experience.
So then you have no trepidation about Travis being on the team going forward?
No, we've had some really good constructive dialogue about it, and like I said, I've never seen evidence of him actually trying to manipulate or influence our investigation in a way that would raise red flags. Again, Eric Bard is our principal investigator and has been in that role since 2016, years before I ever agreed to any docuseries, years before I ever considered making my identity as the owner public.
Yeah. I'm going to get to a couple.
Good question. So
yeah.
Ask Brandon why they don't blow the mesa up. Because we don't want to destroy that which may actually hold the key to understanding what is happening. It's kind of like if there's an ancient iPhone that is transmitting from within the mesa, or some type of advanced technology that is involved with what we are observing and experiencing, the worst thing that we could do is damage it or blow it up.
Or if there's a radiation source down there, right?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to handle our investigation of the mesa specifically as like a medical biopsy. And we're trying to be very careful to not destroy or damage that which we are seeking to study.
Well, not only that, but you have Native American artifacts up there as well.
Before we finish the show, I just want to thank Brandon Fugal for being able to take hard questions. And these are the questions we've gotten from a lot of people. And he's giving blunt answers to the questions. And I've had these questions. And you've all seen me on social media talking about these questions. And he's actually answering them, and he's not dodging them, and he's not going, oh, well, maybe if or whatever, and I have to, dodge this. No, he's actually answering them. So thank you, Brandon, for doing that, because a lot of people have these questions.
Yeah. Thank you for your trust. I don't want to do anything that will ever compromise my reputation. I mean, I represent hundreds of projects. I have, Fortune 500 companies that I advise. I'm working on a lot of different efforts that are outside of the realm. In fact, 95% of my focus is not Skinwalker Ranch. It's in the realm of conventional business. If anyone thinks that this is some this is some money-making opportunity for me, I mean, I'll go back on record saying I have yet to take a penny relative to this effort. I have not even opened a bank account for Adamantium Real Estate for that specific reason. I am all about the truth and having integrity and a level of professionalism in seeking the truth that we can actually be proud of in years to come and decades to come. I hope that that this will be a legacy scientific research program that people will look back on 100 years from now and say, you know what? Thank goodness there was a team of people and an effort assembled to explore these topics, because here we are.
Brother, do me a favor, just keep an eye on any other questions that might be coming in the live chat, and I'll get through these questions that we've put to the side. Welp, that's it with a £5 donation, asks, does the hitchhiker effect attach itself to a person, or to its device like a phone or car radio? Stephen Chris, GR Stephen Chris, I'm not sure what that means.
Good question. I think it's personal. I don't think that it's attached to a device or haunting some piece of equipment. The hitchhiker effect seems to attend individuals that have been engaged with the ranch, that have visited the ranch, and end up having these things follow them. There are so many documented incidents. These are not just ghost stories. These aren't just anecdotal accounts. We have documented evidence that truly extraordinary things, oftentimes disturbing events, have followed members of not only my team, but others that have been involved with this ranch outside of the ranch into their homes, have impacted their families, have terrorized, in some cases, their families. When I have people sign liability waivers with respect to their involvement with the ranch, it's serious. It is because there is a danger involved with the ranch, and it's not just acute medical episodes that occur like that which sent Thomas Lewis to the emergency room this past season in concert with that experiment, but it's also some of those really disturbing things that seem to follow people and impact their personal lives. And it's unfortunate. I don't want anyone to ever be hurt. That's why we have professionals out there to test the environment every time. That's why we force our people to carry instrumentation that will hopefully give them advance notice that they should leave the area. But we're dealing with forces that are unknown and sometimes bring disturbing incidents.
Well, to lighten up the mood a little bit, Logan Black had a fun question. Who's Brandon's favorite 80s hair metal band?
Boy.
I mean, I know you're big Depeche Mode fan.
Def Leppard.
Okay.
Def Leppard. I challenge anyone to come up with a better 80s hair glam rock band than Def Leppard Hysteria. That album is just awesome. Second would be Scorpions. Scorps holds a special place. And then you've got the other usual suspects like Bon Jovi, Poison. Great White had a couple of really good hits. Rat. I mean, you got to love Rat.
All right. Boo the Beagle with a $50 super sticker. Thank you so much for the donation. Truly appreciate it. Alex Sears says, how many federal level elected officials has Brandon hosted on the ranch, and who? Great question, by the way, Alex.
Federal, two.
Okay. Both governors.
Can you say who?
Well, no.
Who you can talk about?
We are working to gain authorization to release footage involving one very high level or a very high profile visit with a federal official. But they gave their permission at first and then retracted their permission, which I had to respect. And we're trying to resolve concerns so we can bring that footage forward, because I think it would be of great interest to the public. And I respect that individual's courage in coming out and engaging with the team. So we've had several, to answer your question.
Okay.
And these are not former. By the way, that's another thing. I don't know if this is lost on everyone in the public, but we're not bringing back a bunch of retired has-beens. A bunch of people are just looking to, that are finally going public after there is no risk. We're bringing people out that are current sitting elected officials, people in high office. I mean, Sean Reyes, I don't think it was insignificant that we had the top law enforcement executive in the state of Utah engaged in season 1, and he's continued even weekly to ask for reports and updates relative to what is happening at the ranch. I think you can probably expect to see people like that continue to work with the team.
Okay. Question from the audience. Has the black smoke thing been seen flying around the ranch?
Black smoke thing.
Maybe he's referring to that big shadow that you guys caught on camera briefly this season from the plane.
We've captured on a number of occasions what some people have referred to as a Dementor of Harry Potter fame. That is a UFO of sort. We've had spectral mist figures. We've had accounts. I mean, when Robbie Williams came out with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, there was and they've gone public with this on a couple of talk shows where there was an incident where the security professional actually visibly saw a spectral mist, a shadowy figure that followed them back into the back room, and he immediately, they had like 5 minutes to depart the premises and head to the private jet to get the hell out of Utah. Wow. We've had a number of incidents like that. Okay, next question. Did NASA ever bury? No, hell no. There's no evidence of that. We've had soils tests, we've had environmental tests done, countless tests done, and we've seen no evidence of any radioactive material on the ranch or any previous government effort that would have left residue from that.
Okay.
What about, I know with the tellurium and europium, I was doing just some very, I guess, superficial research, and there has been some artificial application or experimental use of those materials and like a new, I guess, more efficient way to, I guess, create energy or electricity by oxidation. Have you explored that? What could be, the 400-foot dome, that it could be man-made, artificial, here on
Working
Earth?
on it. TBD.
Okay.
Yep. In process.
Cool.
It does not appear to be natural. Whatever it is, whatever we are encountering so far has left credentialed scientists, experts scratching their heads. It's inconclusive though right now. I've got like 2 minutes. Any other questions?
Yeah, let me see. We had one here from Chris Bartel, so I want to make sure I get this one in. Brandon has provided more insight and communication to me personally than Bigelow did my entire time on Skinwalker Ranch. That is why his team is so successful. Open communication is key. A big thank you to Brandon and his team. There are a ton of other questions here. I just
Great
want to
respect. Bring on more. Chris Bartel, love you. Chris Bartel is considered an extended member of our team, and my entire team looks forward to the opportunity to gain wisdom and insight from those who have served before. And we welcome that element to the investigation. Is the film crew having the same trouble? Yes. Oh my gosh. All the time. If we didn't have 4 or 5 cameras at once and multiple drones and audio equipment, I got to tell you, and I won't tell you exactly when, but let's just say it was recent. I saw Thomas Winterton's batteries changed out on his microphone like 3 times in I think an hour. And these are supposed to go for 8 hours.
Mm.
And again,
in general terms, I know we have to wrap this up. In the next season, if there is a next season, are we going to be looking at I don't want to go into details you probably can't talk about yet. Are we going to be looking into the United States government's interest in what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch.
Sure.
That
Although I don't
has
really give
not
it.
shown up.
Yeah.
Really.
Yes and no. I mean, yes, I think that's an element, but again, I think the reason why we're getting the results that we're getting, we're able to advance this, is because it's the private sector. If we were relying on the government, good luck. Next question. Here's an idea.
Not a question, but just
yeah.
Just
I got that. Thanks, John Russell. You rock.
There was 2 really great questions, and then I swear we'll get you out of here. The first was a really great question from Tupacabra. Is anyone documenting the dreams of the team or crew?
Not in a. We should be more organized and more methodical with that. We should have a log but to be honest, we're probably not being as diligent and detailed with that as we should be. It's a good question that I'm going to have to send everyone a text as a result.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
This will be the last thing. Anything key that you learned from Chris Bartell being on the ranch? Anything that you didn't know before he came to visit? By the way, Chris, I got a shout. I gotta email you. I want to get you and Carl on the show together. But anyway, go ahead.
I think the thing that we've learned from Chris Bartell is how to respect the ranch. I think the team, in engaging with Chris Bartell, have gained a new appreciation for what they're dealing with. That they're dealing with forces and phenomena that is unexplained, and that there really needs to be humility brought to the table. As much as it's fun to light rockets off and to poke the hornet's nest and to disrupt the environment in service to trying to get an interaction, the reality is we have to be respectful of our neighbors, of the history, the heritage of the property, and the fact that we don't know what we're dealing with. It is not. When we have prayer before entering the airspace, before anyone enters, that's not for television. That's because people are advised to prepare themselves spiritually, consciously, as they enter the property, because there are risks and because it does require a level of humility and reverence. Last question.
No, that was it. Brandon, thank you so damn much for your time.
Thank you,
your
sir.
Time more than anything. And the again, just the openness to have these questions asked. We could talk to you all day, honestly. You're so damn fascinating and so open. So we appreciate it. I mean, unless you want really one more question, the only question I have, confirm season 4, yes or no?
Well,
I'm taking that as a yes. Yes, everybody.
Yeah, given the fact that I'm told repeatedly that we've been trending top 10 on Netflix and that we are the leading show on history on a major network,
our Skinwalker Ranch review shows we have 500 people in here right now. That's Jimmy Church numbers. That's Big Phone Home numbers. Like, this is the most watched series we have on my channel. So
I'll say this. To your credit, Lou, I mean, you've created, I think, a forum for people to ask questions, to engage, and it's greatly appreciated. I'm surprised that it's not thousands or tens of thousands, to be quite candid, given the gravity of these topics and the reality. If people really understood how significant this is, I think you'd have the whole world tuning in. But I think most people would just as soon be plugged back into the matrix, and they don't want to have anything challenge their paradigm. So hats off to all of you. You're all courageous, and I'm with you. If there's one thing I want to leave you with, is that I'm a fellow explorer and truth seeker, and I'm with you every step of the way, asking the hard questions. So if you think you're asking the hard questions, imagine being the one writing the checks.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. But hey, we appreciate the time. We
love
really
you.
do.
Bye.
Yep. Thank you, sir. Love you as well.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right, you guys. Brandon Fugal.
Make me a believer again. I'm right back on board.
Look at Jane. Jane's back.
Maybe all those UFOs were aliens. Maybe.
I know, Jazz. I want to respect your. I always want to respect your time. So, Jazz Shaw, it's been 2 hours. Do you want to stick around for a little bit post conversation about Brandon?
No,
Fugal,
I can't. I don't want to sound lame.
No, not at all.
My-
It's been 2
my
hours. It's been a
niece
long time.
My niece has her actual enunciation
Oh,
today.
okay. All right.
So, we're doing that.
Get out of here.
And I was talking to Brandon a couple days in advance of this show, and I wanted to make sure we did it. I think it's important, but yeah, I gotta go.
All right,
Great
sir.
questions,
Thank you so
Jeff.
much for being here. Awesome questions as always. And
Thank you.
yeah, keep that tan up because it looks good on you.
Yeah, I'm trying.
All right, sir. We'll see you soon. So, guys, I also want to extend that courtesy to everybody else here. Christina, do you have to go?
I do have to get
Okay.
going, but I would like to mention that tomorrow, Mysteries with the History, we're doing a deep dive on the Uinta Basin, the ranch, and the legend and lore with Jimmy Church. So I'm pretty excited to do that. And I want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. It was such a pleasure to be able to speak with Brandon and hear so much that he had to say. I think he filled in so many of the gaps that a lot of us were asking.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Christina Gomez, thank you so much for being here and being part of this whole review for the season. We really appreciate your perspective as well. So thanks for
you.
being here. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
All right, bye.
Yeah.
Guys, how we do? Team, my core team. How we doing? You guys okay? You want to talk about this for a little bit, or do you want to save this for tomorrow?
It's up to you guys.
Which I don't even think
That's
we'll have
right.
time for it tomorrow. I'll be honest with you. But okay, just real quick, because I am curious, especially what the two of you thought, because I think from a science perspective, you guys were the most harsh on the science aspect. And so was I, to be honest. Like all three of us sort of had the scientific, we're like, this is just not feeding my scientific curiosity and or the way I thought science was done, the process, right? So, Jane, we'll start with you. What did you think of? I know you were listening before you were able to hop in because you were working, and I appreciate you coming in. But what did you think of his answers to some of the tougher questions, especially the first one right out of the gate that Rather had for him?
I really liked his answers. I mean, anytime we talk to Brandon, it's always like I said, I always get right back in the game and I get more hopeful, and it sounds like he's gone down. It sounds like there's a lot of deleted scenes and offline conversations and things happening that makes you put a little much more trust in the team than what we see on the show. But I would still say, Rather, I think that you were still on point with your question about the scientific method. I guess it's fair to say science is being done in the sense of there are aspects of science like data collection, and that all has to happen, right? Like poking the hornet's nest. But in this sense of proving portals, that I don't know that there's been a single experiment, well, in this season especially, I guess. The recap of the whole show is enlightening. I don't know that there's been a single experiment where it's like, we expect a portal to behave like this, or the reason why we think radiation means portal is because it would expel radiation. Like there's just doesn't seem to be those connections between the wilder suggestions and the actual events on the ranch.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I think that there's no question that Brandon is open and honest and trying to get to the truth. I think there is still a little bit of maybe just a communication issue on that science issue. They're definitely getting evidence and doing interesting things, but essentially they are kind of poking the hornet's nest and saying what happens, which is interesting and will provide us data, but it's not the scientific method necessarily. Although they could be doing that at some points, but I think that there's a little bit of just a communication disconnect there.
What was the term that he was using to the other term he was using to explain poking the hornet's nest? It was observational
Science exploration,
or like a scientific exploration. That's it.
Yes.
I think if this TV show was sold more as a scientific exploration than the scientific process, I would be way more accepting to. I don't even know if we would have a science score attached to the show. The only reason we have a science score attached to the show was because we're told this is a scientific show. This is a show that shows the scientific process. And when we watch it, we go, I don't see the scientific process. I see the scientific exploration. That is all over this show. You can't deny that. But what I think also is that, and Brandon agreed with this, and this is something that Eric Weinstein had had sort of expressed in his discussion about the ranch was he hasn't been there. And I think if you went there, if I went there, if Jane went there, if Eric Weinstein went there, we would go to the ranch, and maybe nothing weird happens at all, right? Maybe nothing anomalous happens, but we go there and we're like, oh, this command center is not just for show. There's actually terabytes upon terabytes of hard drive space where they're collecting data. And oh my God, look, here are the first few chapters of their scientific paper that they're starting to write. Or here's the data, whatever that piece of data is. Who's to say they don't have it and that the show's not doing a good job of justifying the science? They justify the entertainment very well with the formula of the show, but I think they do the science a big disservice sometimes in the show.
Well, yeah, I agree with you as well. And maybe instead of a science score, it could be, have they found new interesting information that could, potentially be acted upon by science in the future? Because they are getting some interesting
newly
stuff.
Potential information that could be uncovered by science in the future score.
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue nicely, doesn't it?
We just have to be careful not to paint ourselves into a portal, right? Corner, right? So here's why I go back to the scientific method thing and that whole hypothesis thing that I think that you asked so well of Brandon. Is that if we keep looking at things like everything is somehow evidence of portals and aliens, and we're not looking at it through any other lens, I don't know how we're going to know what experiments to run, right? And I do think that there's the show where, we're saying that and stuff and everybody can laugh and be like, oh, that's not a big deal. But it is a big deal because Dr. Taylor is on the show. He's part of UAPTF. Who else is talking about things like this? Lou Elizondo. Okay. Mm-hmm. Quantum physics. It's a big buzzword. Portals it's getting a lot of traction. Right. And so I do kind of think it's important that the experiments they're doing do connect, because we can theorize, all day. Like, I mean, when I think about doing experiments, I'm like, man, they could do stuff with time, right? Like that would be fun. That would be direct evidence, right? Right. And so, anyways, I think there's things that they could do to lead us in that direction in a more scientific way than they are today. Yeah.
Well, I think something that Jazz had pointed out was sort of the signals differential and how the show explained these signals, and it kind of inferred that these signals are related to each other. And even Brandon said, yeah, that's not the case. We know this, right? Like scientifically, that doesn't make sense. And even admitted that the show needs to do a better job, because here's the problem is you put information like that out and someone takes that to a dinner party and starts spewing this stuff that's scientifically not accurate at all. And when people at the table question it, that, I think it creates a lot of potential problems, and I think it also adds a little bit, to the confusion. So hopefully they clean that up in season 4, because it sounds like we're getting a season 4. They're definitely have to be shooting it right now. I mean, that's the sense that I gathered from him. He's just not allowed to talk about it yet. And thank you, Dennis Benke, for the $20 super sticker. You guys, the super stickers and chats today have been phenomenal. So really, really appreciate it. It goes a very long way, because we do have the Big Phone Home coming up August 19th. So get ready. I've been planning it, been getting in touch with guests that we're going to have on the show. John Greenwald is writing our template for the United States. We've got Grant Levac writing our template for Australia, and we've also got a Canadian template as well. I'm trying to find somebody that maybe could help us with a UK template. So if you guys know anybody out there in the UK, a Texas template, yeah. John Greenwald's template should help cover that. But I mean, of course, you could always personalize these templates to say whatever you want. We encourage that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think if Lou Elizondo, Sean Cahill, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, Linda Moulton Howe, and there's a bunch of other people that I'm thinking of as well, but those are just the few off the top of my head. If they engaged us the way Brandon Fugal engages us,
10% of that.
even 10%. No, I want 100% of it because it's reasonable. It's a reasonable request to be able to ask you questions without you taking personal offense to it. Like, and I think that's the most refreshing part about Brandon Fugal is that he's going to come back on the show after this barrage of questions.
But he's not just trying to prove his own personal belief. I believe he's trying to get to the truth, and he's
really is
taking the criticism in stride and learning and
also putting his own money into it. Like, that says a lot, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, no matter how kooky or goofy you think the show is, he's putting money into it, you know? And of course, like we found out today, the production company helps subsidize those experiments, which they should, because they're making money hand over fist in advertising dollars for sure. You know, especially once they get on the season 4, like those contracts start to change the more seasons get bought up. But not only that, it's trending on Netflix. You know, it's the biggest show on History Channel. Like, you know, so they should be subsidizing those things. And I don't think whatever money he's collecting from the portal, I heard there's t-shirts on the portal. You can buy merch. Whatever they've sold in that has not covered the cost of him buying the ranch. Just hasn't. I would put any amount of money on that. Like, he's not in the green when it comes to the expenses of this ranch. In fact, I think he's more indebted because he's putting money into this stuff. I mean, so again, from that,
his time could be better spent on a monetary perspective doing, you know, real estate, doing his day job. I'm sure, right?
He just spent almost 2.5 hours with us.
Yeah.
Like a billionaire with a private plane, you know, is taking the time to talk to, I'm just going to speak for myself, this dummy, you know, like come on, like he's so open to the criticisms, tough questions. I mean, that, like, I love the question that we got about Travis Taylor and how pissed Dragon was. Like, I can't wait to talk to Dragon about that and sort of get his perspective of why he
makes me like Dragon more.
He makes me like Dragon even more. Yeah. Because I think he sees, hey, that's a potential problem, you know? And how do we know that you're not manipulating these experiments or the results? Like, at the end of the day, you don't know. And I don't want to throw this out there as if it's like a point of, you know, non-trust that you're part of the DOD and you work on weapon systems and you're heavily involved in the military industrial complex, and who knows what other manipulation tactics you might know or have learned within the military. The problem is we don't know, and I think it's an issue for sure. I could understand why team members are like, yeah, I'm not down with that.
I mean, I still don't understand why his position was secret at all, right? I can understand his, you know, everything that went into it. You know, he can't say any data, but just saying that he was the head of the chief scientist.
You know, like, there's no reason he should
why that would be secret.
Yeah. Or if anything, it's just like, hey, look, I don't want this publicly known, but from a team aspect, hey, if you guys could keep this in house, just FYI, I'm working for so and so and so and so. Like, you're right. Like, it's not a classified assignment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, you make a great point. But I mean, you know, I got to say, and we'll wrap it up here, guys, and I appreciate you guys being here, but I got to say, like, him coming on the show really, really just does wonders for my respect levels and my trust in the process, you know, because like I said, we're sitting here, we're playing Monday morning quarterback. All we have to do is turn on the TV, watch the show, and give our notes. You know, we're not out there climbing the mountains trying to get to the whole, like, I always think about, like, man, it's just funny how TV cuts a 30-minute hike up the side of a mesa, you know, and I'm sure they're probably huffing and puffing by the time they get up there, the camera crews with the batteries and the cameras and the drones. Like, it's a pain in the ass to film at this ranch. And it's probably part of the reason why we only get 10 episodes a season, as opposed to like Oak Island that gets sometimes 22 episodes in a season, because ain't nobody climbing a mountain in Oak Island. You know, they're all pretty, you know, like the hardest work they do is, you know, like archaeological work, getting down on your hands and knees and brushing things and looking for artifacts. But these guys are like doing manual labor a lot of the time. It's tough to keep up that ranch. So anyway, but yeah, I wish the most respected voices in this community would have his attitude, especially when it comes to asking tough questions. And there's a lot of tough questions that I don't want to call them heroes, but our heroes in this community never get. They never get their feet put to the fire. And I think it does this whole conversation a disjustice. It really, really does. And I really I wish we could get Linda Moulton Howe to speak like him. She would come on this show, no problem. If what she's saying is, you know, if she
doesn't have anything to hide and wants to be open and honest,
if she's incredibly confident in what she's putting out there, talk to anybody and everybody. No question should throw you off. No question should throw you off. And there was not one question that threw him off to a point where he either got mad at us or just didn't answer the question. You know, he would pontificate a lot on things. And sometimes that gets like when you asked him the question, who, or was it Jazz or Christina asked him the question about the Mesa and if Bigelow blew it up or not. He didn't answer the question. So, and thankfully somebody in the chat or I think it was Matthew Wright, who's like, hey, he didn't answer the question, you know, like, and so we go back and we answer pointedly and he answered it, you know? So, you know, I go ahead, Jane.
Can I just want to remind people, because I think got a lot of grief this season for not having fun with a lot of like the science theory and everything. And I think it's just because we have to be a little bit careful not to just be too led astray by some of the fanciful ideas. Because remember, this is not right now. Ghosts and Bigfoot they're not on a senator's desk right now, right? So it's a little bit different. And then just for me, like the themes of this last season are we've got broken equipment, you know, a pattern of broken equipment, you know, experiments going wrong, radiation, negative physical effects, you know, on the body. We found some metals, but as far as we can tell, it sounds like nothing terribly rare, but can lead us to more questions. Some just kind of miscellaneous oddities worth exploring. As far as the UAP, I think we see evidence of cloaked potential craft, you know, that aren't showing up on air traffic systems. The drones don't, by the way, guys. They don't. I don't know that we've seen the observables. As neat as some of the footage has been, I don't think that we've actually seen the observables. So I think we just have,
that's the thing,
have to take a step back and look like, okay, what is actually evidence showing? And guys, right now, I'm seeing more evidence of perhaps human intervention than I am of werewolves and portals and what we're seeing in the petroglyphs and in the stories. And that's just, I know that may not be a popular opinion, but that's why I'm not going down those paths a lot.
But I think if he comes to that conclusion as well, once the research is done, I don't think he'd have a problem admitting, okay, here's what it is, or having a problem telling the truth to what it is. Because I've reached out to Carl Vibe. I wanted to reach out to him first and get him and Chris Bartel, because they formed such a beautiful friendship here in the last month or two. And they've been doing killer research together.
That's cool.
and figuring out problems to very confusing questions and putting those problems on display for people to see. And I think having a conversation with the both of them, comparing old school Skinwalker Ranch research team versus new Skinwalker Ranch research team, I think is a clear night and day difference. It's so clear who's more open, who's more engaging, who's more welcoming to criticism versus who's not those things. I think it's very clear, but I just can't wait to have Chris Bartel and Carl Crusher here, because I think it's going to be a killer conversation. And I highly recommend go check out the conversation with Chris Bartel and Ryan Sprague, because it was amazing. And yeah, I hope, and you know, we'll find out through time that if a conventional explanation is put on the table and is tested and found to be true to explain the anomalies seen there, we should accept it. Everyone. But that comes from the top at the ranch, right? If Brandon decides to dig in his heels and say, no, that's not what it is, then we're going to have an issue. But if he's like, hey, that's where the research led us. This is what we got. Here's what it is. We figured it out. And and then maybe, who knows what they do with the land by then. But I think they're open for any possibility.
It may be too big of a, like, to Brandon's point, to all of these theories, portals, like we don't even have, like, for example, as far as I know, traditional physics, like you can't even do the math for that, right? Because you'd have to invoke time, and you're folding space and time. And so, like, maybe it is beyond, the scope of the show. We are just taking baby steps. I can accept that too. I think the UAP phenomenon is real, so it might be beyond experimentation right now. But we should try. Try.
I agree. This is an interesting point. I disagree, Lou. He wants to sell the ranch later. He needs to keep up the hype. I mean, how much value would this possibly add to that ranch? I mean, if I was a buyer of a ranch, if anything, I'd be like, yeah, I want less for that, because now people know where it is. Like, are people going to be trying to jump my fence?
One day.
I don't really care either way. Like, if he makes a profit off selling the land, fine, that's real estate. But land, for the most part, naturally rises in value. It doesn't usually decrease. It does on occasion, and I think we're going to get there with this recession where it takes a dip, but it'll go back up. And I think it's I see what you're saying, but I disagree with you respectfully. I don't think
it's definitely not his primary motivation.
Yeah, I don't think this adds any value. Again, like, if you were an actual serious rancher and you wanted to ranch on that land, you're buying the property knowing that a TV production has been there. A whole bunch of kooks are going to come to your property trying to get in and conduct experiments that you don't want them there for. I would be like, yeah, you're asking $200,000. I'll give you 150 because I have to deal with this forever, and they would have to hire a security team if whoever bought that ranch, just to keep people off of it. So I disagree. I don't think he makes any money or will ever make money on that ranch. The overhead on it is too high, I think. But anyway, well, you guys, that was an awesome conversation. That was a really awesome day. I always love days like this on the show. If you're new to the channel, do us a favor. Subscribe, like, share the show. Get us in that all important algorithm. It helps tremendously. Jane, you had a killer conversation with Mick West yesterday, right?
Yeah, Mick West. It was great, and everybody was so nice. Everybody was real nice in the chat and so far in the comments. So thanks, guys, for being.
And by the way, tomorrow we're gonna have Nick Callous Coffin on the show. They officially have an invisible night school sort of organization of researchers, which I listened to their Twitter space last. It was really cool. He just wrote an article about the Hudson Valley UFO flap. So if you've seen any of his research when it comes to the Michigan UFO flap, this should be a very interesting hour. And then we'll also get into what we were supposed to get into last week, which was the James Webb Telescope pictures, and also the discussion between Mick and Eric Weinstein. And I've got a couple other things that we'll touch on in the second hour. But Rather, you got anything coming up?
Just still researching whales and dolphin communication, and I hope to put a little video on my channel rather than Squidding sometime in the coming week or two.
Are we doing a Rather's rant tomorrow?
Sure. Yeah, I got plenty.
If you're not ready, don't worry. I thought we were. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I can always rant. I got many rants lined up.
All right. So tomorrow we'll have a Rather's rant. So join in if you haven't subscribed already. We've got links for Jane, for Christina, for Rather, for Jazz. And I also put Brandon Fugal's Twitter handle after the show's over in the description below. So go check out and support their stuff. If you haven't already, check out my Patreon. It's a great way to support this show. We could always use more Patreons. The more support we get, the easier it is to do this show. I could take off more time from work and devote to doing more shows for you guys. This Saturday, we're doing... Jane, Jane's not going to be there.
I can't make it.
Bummer. But we're doing our review of Nope on Saturday night. We're going to have Rather. We're going to have Chupacabra. Tried to get Red Panda, but he's got friends in town. And we got Ryan Sprague coming in. So we're going to break down Nope on Saturday night. So that'll be really cool. And yeah, tomorrow's going to be a very interesting and fun show. So tune in tomorrow. And yeah, that's it. Other than that, have a great night, you guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe out there. Peace.
Hi.
What, I got to remove you now, rather? Where you can't hit the button? Jeez, man. You're a real. And by the way, if I missed your super chat, you guys, I apologize. We tried to get as many questions as we could in there. Rather be wailing. Are you just finding all the comments now that have show love for just you? Can we get a couple We Love Lou? You know, damn, man. Damn. Love y'all.
Thank you.